Okay, so now we're going to learn about integers in Java. So let's just create a new project for this. We'll house all of our code for integers in here. So like in previous tutorials, we're going to go new project. We'll call this integers. Leave all the defaults, 21, blah, blah, blah. Save it where you want, and let's press create. Now we'll get a window like this. We have this auto-generated code. I discussed this in the previous video. If this is completely alien to you, go and watch that. But for now, we're going to use this template code. So I'm just going to get rid of line 3, make a little bit of space, just so we can clearly see our file. Now, an integer, as you might know, is sort of like a whole number. So essentially, we can create, whole numbers in Java. We can output those, and we can also store them. Now, primarily, we use this for storing things. We can store an integer about a certain thing, about a certain attribute, and we can do things with that. So, I'm going to create an integer and save it within memory so that we can then use it later. So, how do we do this? Watch. Int. And then we put the name of our variable. So we can call it x, right? And we say equals. And then we can write any number we want. So I'm going to go 676. And then remember, at the end of every single line in Java, we put a semicolon so that Java knows it's the end of this line. Now right here, we have defined our first integer variable. And essentially, we can now reference this value, 676, by this name that we've put here, which is obviously x. Now, this is the format that you would define an integer in. So it has int, which tells us, what's going to be stored in x is going to be an integer. And then we have a value to the right of the equals, and then a name to reference that value, which could be whatever we want. We've chosen x, but we can write x, y, z, or we can write blah, 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 blah. And that's always valid, all valid. That name could be whatever you want, but we're just going to call it x for now for simplicity. So we've stored x within memory. Obviously, that's memory on our computer. And now we can reference x from anywhere else within this part here. So anywhere in here, anywhere between these two curly brackets, we can reference x again. So now let's just output x, and we'll apply what we learned in the last video of this series. So we can go SOUT system.out.println, so print line, and then we can write x, which is no strings, just x. None of this stuff, no other stuff, we just type x. And we can see that it highlights that variable here. And we can see here that x is equal to 676. So let's run this and see what happens. As you can see, we have outputted 676 as we expected. Now, obviously, that's, pretty useless. We can output a number. That's nothing special. So we can also do operations on this number. So what we can do is we can create another integer. Let's say int y equals 100, right? Obviously, make sure to put a semicolon at the end of every single line, and then this code will be valid. Now, if we run this again, obviously the same thing is going to happen because this line does not change, what x is, because x is obviously 676. Now, what we can do is we can add these two together, we can times them together, we can divide them, we can subtract them, we can do all sorts that you can do in maths normally. So, instead of just printing x, let's try and print x plus y. Now, we can do this in a couple of ways. We can create a new integer which is going to store the combined x and y, which we'll do here. So we'll go int z, or we'll call this combined. We can say equals, And then we can reference those two variables. So we can go x plus y. Then make sure to add a semicolon at the end, as that's the end of the line. And this creates some valid code. So as we can see here, we have x plus y here. X is 676, y is 100. So that would be, in this instance, the same as doing 676 plus 100. And that is what the value of combined is going to be. We don't always need to sort of put in an explicit value here, you know. If we have two other integers, two other numbers, we can add those together here. And that will be the value of combined. So now, if we run this, obviously nothing's going to change. It's still going to print this number because we've told it to down here. Because we're printing x. So now, instead of printing x, we're going to delete this. And in between these brackets, we're going to print the combined. So we start typing combined. And as you can see, autocomplete brings that up for us here. Let's write it out fully. But if you want this to, you know, complete it for us, we press enter. But we're just going to write combined. So now we're printing out the combined version. So now let's see what happens if we press run. And now we get 776, which, as far as I'm aware, is what this is. 676 plus 100 is 776, I think. Hopefully the computer's got it right. So that's one operation that we can do. So now let's rename this to combined add. And obviously now what's going to happen is, as you can see, this all stuff turns red and we get red everywhere. You know, if we try and run it, we can't run it because it's throwing this error. The reason why is because we renames this. And so now we need to rename the reference as well. So wherever we reference this, we want to put add. So combined add. And then it's referencing that same variable. We can run it again. Cool. So we can do many other operations with integers. So for example, we can subtract them, we can times them. Let's do timesing. So let's write int combined multi. So this can multiply them together or times them together, as we call it. Say equals x. And then in Java, we want to use this sort of wildcard here. So it should be above, it should be Shift 8 on your keyboard. That is multiplication in most programming languages. We've got x times y. Then make sure to put a semicolon. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to create a little space here. And we can create these spaces in lines in Java. We can create as much space as we want here, but there's no point. We're just going to create some spaces for readability. So we can clearly see, you know, these two variables are here, these two variables are here. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to print out combined multi. So we start typing combined multi. Then if we run that, hopefully on the first line, we'll get combined multi, which is a big number. And then below it, we'll get combined add, which is correct. So that's just sort of an intro to integers. We can obviously do division and subtraction as well. But next, we are going to have a look at strings.